Okay, my name is Manish Daga, or I call EPM Product Development Team. I lead development of EPBCS Framework, the whole enable features, the configurations, and the financials and projects models in EPBCS. Okay. Thanks for joining for this session on EPBCS. Welcome. So safe harbor applies here again because some of the things which I am going to demonstrate today are in near-term roadmap. So before I jump into my session, can I have a quick show of hand? How many of you are familiar with EPBCS? Okay, so fair number. So you know EPBCS, so good. So and how many of you are actually familiar with the on-prem modules? Okay, cool. So as I go through this session, I will I will talk about the challenges in operation. So operational planning and how operational planning is different from strategic planning, let's discuss that. So operational planning is very critical for aligning your execution to strategy, right? So you may have a strategic plan of expanding into different markets or expanding into global markets or increasing the market share, but unless it is translated into detailed operational plans, the plans will just remain on paper, right? Operational planning actually helps facilitate coordination between different functions and business units. So your sales plan is, or the revenue plan done by the sales team is a critical input to the marketing plan, which the marketing team comes up with for their new campaigns, or the engineering team, which comes up with new projects for the R&D projects, right? So it facilitates coordination across different functions and business units. And it also helps align the people, the resources to appropriate initiatives based on dynamic market conditions. And finally, it helps in bringing more rigor and accuracy in the planning process because you have more line managers getting involved in the planning process who are actually responsible for the execution, right? So the plans get more accurate and more precise. However, the challenge with operational planning is that only 9% of senior executives are really happy with the execution, the operational execution. And the main reason for this is the inefficient planning processes and systems. So let me quickly discuss some of the challenges in operational planning. Operational planning is done in standalone applications or worse in spreadsheets, and these are disconnected. It's a very cumbersome and manual process where the focus is more on entry and data collection and consolidating data from different planners rather than on actually fine-tuning the plans based on the dynamic market conditions or spending more time on analysis and actually deriving the benefits of the planning process, right? The plans become stale very soon because once you have created the plan, if you don't relook at the plan for a few weeks or even for a few months, they are outdated. Because the market is so dynamic, you need to fine-tune the plans every time. No plan is accurate. And there is also difficulty in integrating with your source systems. So it is very critical for the planning process to actually measure your plan against actual. So you need to do plan versus actual analysis very frequently so that you are actually fine-tuning the plan on a regular basis. And unless you are able to integrate with the transactional applications or the source applications, that is possible. Another complexity in operational planning is especially the granularity of the plan or the time horizon of the plan, it varies. So sales plan you may create at more weekly granularity, while the marketing plan may be at a monthly granularity, or a capital expenditure plan may be more like quarterly granularity. So the granularity varies, the dimensionality varies for different plans. So it is very difficult to integrate all of those plans and actually create a uniform or provide some visibility to the top management of on in actually defining how the strategy will be executed through the operational plans, right? And there is over-reliance on IT. So the IT keeps spending lots of time in actually trying to maintain the hardware or install the software instead of actually helping business in solving their business challenges, right? The focus is more on the technology problem rather than on the business problem. So what we'll do in next few slides and through lots of demos, which I'm going to do today, is quickly see how you can leverage EPBCS for solving some of these challenges and what is the value proposition of EPBCS in this operational planning scenario. So Enterprise Planning Cloud actually provides the best practices framework for operational planning. This framework has been developed based on the collective knowledge that we gained interacting with you, the customers, over last 15, 16 odd years working in the planning domain, delivering the product to you. So the framework has, even though it is new, it has evolved based on the knowledge that we gained from you. The EPBCS framework actually, or the product, delivers 4 out-of-box planning processes which you can configure in various different ways. And we are already started seeing customers using this framework for marketing planning or for their strategic workforce planning or for their sales planning or manufacturing planning and etc. Other use. The motivation behind Enterprise Planning Cloud was to allow our customers to get started quickly with the process rather than spending months together before they start using the application, right? So we have actually taken the pure SaaS approach while developing this framework or the product. In the SaaS world, the cloud world, the expectation from customers is that they should be getting up and running with the product day one, if possible, right? So they don't want to spend time in just collecting the requirements, developing the solution. The approach is more incremental. So they want to get started quickly and then evolve it into a more complete scenario over a period of time. So let's go into more details now. So what EPBCS allows you to do is start with a very small and simple application so you can pick and choose the features that you really want in the application, the core requirements of business. So I highly recommend that when you are looking at EPBCS, talk to your business users, try to limit those requirements that you are getting in first phase. Try to get only those top few requirements which will get you started immediately with the application. There are several advantages of that. The quick win helps you to develop some credibility with the business users. It helps business users learn the product quickly because they are not overwhelmed with lots of different things in the application. So it is like incrementally you can keep adding more and more things over a period of time. So EPBCS does provide lots of, having said that you can start with a small application, simple application, but we do provide lots of configuration capabilities out of box. So, and I will show a demo of that now. So you can actually configure the application the way you want to, but I would suggest that take an incremental approach while doing this. Of how this can be done. So basically when you land into EPBCS, for those of you who are coming from the on-prem world, this is the new interface that we have in EPBCS, the simplified interface. So EPBCS works mainly with the simplified interface. We don't support standard interface with EPBCS. So as you land into the application, you can go to application and configure UI and pick and choose the features what you want here. So I will spend some time on this screen here because I want to discuss the motivation behind this, why we did this, what is happening behind the scene, and what is the advantage of going with this framework, right? So if you look at it here, right, we are not talking about forms, business rules, or menus, or dashboards. These are features and functionalities, right? So we are talking about expense planning, we are talking about revenue planning, we are talking about in case of projects, contract projects, indirect projects, those kind of things, right? What each feature includes is all these different artifacts. So each feature has a set of forms, set of rules, set of dashboards, set of menus, all clubbed together as a bundle, right? So that is the first thing. The second thing is that as you can see various options there, right? So these are all like, you can pick and choose each option based on the business requirement. So for example, in this case, financials, if the company's, your use case is more like product revenue planning, you're doing more products or you're doing more services, you can pick and choose, like your driver is services or your driver is product for revenue planning. Similarly, if you're doing projects, you can, if you are interested more, or your organization mostly does internal projects, then you can just choose internal projects. Or if you are a services organization, you are doing contract projects, you can just choose contract projects. And if you are doing only time and material projects, you can choose time and material projects. So there are various options available here. And as these options are selected, the models are generated dynamically. So it is adding lots of dynamic behavior in the model. For example, if you go further, you can choose the dimensions that you want in the model. You can actually rename the dimensions if you want to map to your business requirements, right? You can select flex dimensions if required, right? So I can add flex dimensions here. And if you are coming from the on-prem world, you know when you add a new dimension in the model, you have to change all the different forms, all the different business rules, everything you have to change, right? This is automatically taken care when you actually choose the dimensions here, okay? And the other critical thing as we developed this model was to ensure that it keeps performing as you add these more things, right? So if you are adding 3 flex dimensions, the performance has to remain the same if you did not have those 3 flex dimensions. So that is the guarantee that we give, because what we have done is we have done thorough testing, we have done lots of performance testing to ensure that it keeps working. And if in case of EPBCS, right, you can actually start with your custom plan types if you want to. You can convert your PBCS application to EPBCS with a single click of button. We have an option in the application configurations where you can convert it to EPBCS, and you can reuse the dimensions from your custom plan types into these business processes. Once you have selected or enabled the options, right, you can go to the configuration UI and it will only list the tasks which are required for configuring this application. So this is a single place for configuring the applications instead of going to 10 different UIs for configurations, right? Yeah.
Is there a particular reason why there are 3 instead of, I mean, people have to
Good question, actually. So is there a reason to have only 3 flex dimensions? So actually speaking, there are, if you look at the mandatory dimensions, there are mandatory dimensions plus each business process has its own dimensions. For example, workforce has employee and job dimension. Apart from that, we have 3 flex dimensions. There is no particular reason. The reason we chose or we have 3 flex dimensions is to ensure that it is performing always. The model is performing, right? But we do have ability to extend the dimensionality in the models by leveraging ASO cubes, by leveraging smart push, and I will demonstrate that in a couple of minutes how you can do that. The other thing we also want to say here is that this is not fixed, by the way. So we are continuously enhancing the product, and as we see need for more dimensionality, as we pick hybrid BSO where we can extend the dimensionality further, we are going to add more. So you will have 4, 5 or 6 flex dimensions for that matter. So it is not fixed. We are continuously innovating on the product side. So quickly going over the configurations, you can see the mandatory configurations, you can see the optional configurations here, and some of the innovations we have done in EPBCS, which are, you can see similarity between strategic modeling and EPBCS in some of the functionalities, and this is by purpose. So if you look at the typical PBCS application where you have your period dimension, and if you have enabled weekly or custom, it is available for all years, same periods, right? But planning doesn't work like that. The near-term plans need to be more granular. The long-term plans, you will have more coarse-grained. So this screen allows you to configure each of your year, how you want to plan. Okay, you can plan near-term monthly, long-term quarterly, or more at yearly granularity, right? It also allows you to do this by different scenarios. So you can plan monthly near term while forecast quarterly if you want to near term, right? So there's lots of such flexibility we have provided in the application. So going into other configuration possibilities that we have in the application is, so you can actually use the same screen, the configuration screen, for importing your metadata or entering your exchange rates or importing your exchange rates. You can also do more complex configurations like add more expense accounts or change the aliases of your expense accounts or revenue accounts to actually map it to your chart of accounts if you want to, right? Or you can change even the member formulas if what we have in the application. If it doesn't suit your requirement, again, each of this configuration is tracked actually. For those of you who have seen on-prem modules, once you have configured or customized the on-prem modules, there was no possibility of upgrading that, right? But in EPBCS, what we have provided ability is that all your configurations are tracked, and when we upgrade the application, your changes are retained. Okay, so that's a huge accomplishment for us here. The other thing which we have already also provided in the application is ability to restore to factory version. So you have customized, you have given us the requirement, we are working on it, but we'll give you a short-term solution that, okay, this is the workaround for you, go with this immediately, but then we are coming up with this feature in next monthly patch. You can actually restore the artifact back to factory version, and I will show you that screen. So you can review all your modified artifacts in one screen, and you can actually restore it to factory version if you want to. So you can change your formula as I mentioned here, and I'll go to the restore factory version. Apart from the member formulas, you can also change the form design if you want to. You don't like the layout of the forms, you don't have to create copy of the forms. So we used to recommend that in the on-premise world, that create a copy and then change. But we recommend here that don't create a copy, change it in place, because then your navigation flow will continue to work, your dashboards will continue to work, so you don't have to do a cascading change throughout by just changing one form, right? You can change even in the dashboards, you can say change the chart types, right? You don't like the pie chart, you want to make it a bar chart, or you can add more charts in the dashboard. And all these things are tracked, and everything else will continue to work. So change those things in place, don't create copy. Similarly, you can change the business logic, business rules, change it in place, and everything else will continue to work. So I'm showing an example of forms here. I will quickly run through this. The other thing we have also added, this artifact labels functionality is new. This is available in PBCS also and in EPBCS. So for each of the artifacts, we have defined some labels, right? And if it doesn't work for you, you can always export the artifact labels and modify and import it back into the application. We support 18 different languages in EPBCS, and if you're doing a global implementation, you can actually change the translations of whatever we have out of box if it doesn't work for you. Or you can define your own translations for the new artifacts that you're adding. So this UI actually allows you to do that very easily. So I just change the label for my navigation flow, and then I refresh it, it shows up immediately here. Let's show the restore factory. So I'm changing the design of the form here. So as I said, right, all these things are being tracked as I change. I can change the dashboards, and then if I go to configure UI again. Everything is available in the configuration UI, so that should be your landing page when you are working on or trying to configure the application. So the landing page, if you go to the action menus, you will see a option there that review modified artifacts. So this lists all the artifacts, okay? Question? Yeah, yeah. So we are seeing more and more customers leveraging EPBCS frameworks, the models, to configure it for operational planning requirements. So we have seen customers using this for seeing them using this for sales planning and other use cases.
Something is outside finance or projects or capex, right? It's not, so where does that fall under? Like, say like some IT capacity planning or something.
Right.
Which category it goes under?
So as I said, there are 4 frameworks available, and you can mix and match those. In case of your specific question for IT projects, right, you can leverage the projects framework. You can also leverage some pieces of workforce framework for tracking the utilization of your employees, and you can configure. So you can pick and choose. So in case of projects, then you can go and choose internal projects. You are just doing IT projects, just choose internal projects. And then you can choose that, okay, I want to do only labor expense planning. I don't care about material and equipment and all that. So I can just choose labor. And then I can say that I want to track utilization of employees, right? So I can choose just that piece from the workforce planning, and then you can combine. That's what I was trying to say. Like, if you look at the various options which are available in the 4 different models, you can create 1,000 different models with that. Because if you just take the permutation combinations of the features that are available with that, right? So we are seeing lots of customers doing that actually now. Mixing and matching, configuring, renaming the dimensions. So in case of marketing planning, for example, right? We are seeing people leveraging the projects framework for marketing because it's very similar requirement. The campaigns, for example, the campaigns have some start date, end date, and they rename the project dimension to campaigns. They rename the other flex dimensions to brand and other thing. And the out-of-box functionality works for them. And then they can add more to that. Similarly, we are seeing people using the financials framework for revenue planning. So they just enable revenue planning. We have trend-based and driver-based revenue planning in financials. And they can enable the different flex dimensions, the markets, segments, all those they can enable, and then they can use it for sales planning. Okay, does that answer your question? Of course, you can. Yeah. Yeah. So what we allow you to do is like, see, whatever you can do in the application, it is all open to you. What we don't want you to do, it is locked. So for example, you can define or rename, you can actually change the label of the forms. So what is visible in the UI will be label, not the name of the form. You can actually rename the dimensions. You can rename the dimensions that the flex dimensions that we have. We provide an ability for you to either map or rename the dimensions. So while you are enabling EPBCS business processes, you have the ability here to actually pick and choose the dimensions what you want, flex dimensions, and rename them. So in this UI, if I go quickly here, this is the UI. So I'm actually renaming the dimensions while I'm the features. Default one also you can change. That's a good question. So the default dimensions that we have, the standard dimensions that we have in PBCS, right? So, and this is documented also. So the way you go about it is like, before enablement, you can rename the dimensions, you can call your account dimension as measures, you can call your period dimension as time, whatever. You can do all that and then you can enable the features. So automatically we ensure that the artifacts will continue to work, whatever we seed with the features.
Because what I see is this is I enable the service, right? I cannot really change the name of the service.
You can change that. Yeah. So that's what I have done here. I have called services as services and applications. I can call it anything else. If
At the existing setup, when we go to change the member, it doesn't allow me to change the member. It doesn't allow me to change the alias.
you can only change the alias for the members. That is correct. For the members, you can only change the aliases. For dimensions, you can change the name while you are enabling. And there is a reason for all this. Like the member names we are actually using in our forms and in our calculations. We want them to continue to work. If you rename those, we will not know what you have done.
Hide the member names from the users and only let them use services.
Of course, you can actually choose just aliases in the preferences and it will get hidden in all the UIs. If you find any UI where it is not getting hidden, log a bug, we'll fix it.
So if you make change to any existing from a business rule and when you do a cache, you will update the
We will ensure that your changes are retained. We will not change, we will not touch the forms or business rules which you have configured. We will ignore those forms and business rules which you have modified when we are upgrading. But as I mentioned earlier, you have the ability to go back to factory version at any point of time. So you can revert to factory version your modified artifacts. Any other questions? Okay, so I was expecting lots of questions on configurations. Apart from the basic configurations, we have advanced configurations also. So I will quickly go to that part of the video here. So I can change the navigation flow completely the way I want. So if you have seen the navigation flow, we have laid it out in a very specific way. We have shipping it by default, right? But that doesn't meet your requirement. You may want to hide some of the things. You don't want all those things what is displayed there. You may want to add new cards, new tabs, all those things, right? So you can either change the navigation in place. There is ability to hide, unhide cards or whatever. You can also create a copy of the navigation flow and then make it your default flow, right? One thing which we have done in case of EPBCS is that as you enable more features, even the copied navigation flow, so you don't lose out on the functionality. Okay, I created a copy, now what happens if I enable new features? I lose out on those things, right? So you will get those new cards if you want to. The other configuration which is available with EPBCS is the integration between different models, right? Now you have these projects, workforce, financials, capital, and they are not, you can make it loosely coupled or tightly coupled the way you want to, right? So let me give you an example of projects here. The projects to financials integration, you are moving your labor expenses, your material expenses and all those from projects to financials, but you also have configured workforce planning and your compensation plan is coming from workforce, right? So you don't want double counting. You don't want the compensation expenses going there and you also getting the labor expenses from projects. So you can actually map your accounts accordingly. So in this case, let me go to the projects configuration. So this is a simple UI for mapping the project's accounts to the financials accounts. We provide ability to do one group 10 projects accounts into one single financial matter. You may have your labor expenses as on-site labor, off-site labor, etc. in projects, and while you just have one account in financials. So everything stays interconnected. Example that I was giving earlier about IT projects, right, where you want to move your the amount of time the resources have spent on the project to workforce to calculate the utilization, right? So that can also be seamlessly done. We have provided out-of-box mappings for moving the data from projects to workforce, and we are leveraging Groovy and Smart Push to automatically move the data as you calculate project expenses. So another example is the capital to a question. Yeah. You don't have to pay individual ones. It's all exactly. It's all in one enterprise planning offering. Not only that, we are adding new things like static modeling is available within enterprise planning, single offering.
With that said, what if you're on PPCS and you monitor workforce
We have a PBCS plus one module option, so you can, if you want, you can choose just one module. If you don't want all, you can choose that. So that's a single click option. So what we have provided, if you already have PBCS pod, you can go to application overview UI, and there is a single button there, convert to EPBCS. That's all. And then you can choose the features that you want.
So if I have a planning application in EPBCS and I activate EPBCS,
Right.
it doesn't change my existing.
It doesn't change anything. It is a flag that we have to say that now you can enable model. So the enable features screen, the configuration screen will be made available to you once you just convert it to EPBCS. Nothing changes immediately as soon as you convert to EPBCS. Yeah.
That means you apply your EPBCS at 1 years height, 1 acre height. When you do migration upgrade, you just copy those.
There is no copy happening. It is all in place. There is just a flag which says that now I am EPBCS. So as soon as that flag is available, we start showing this configuration UI to you. That's all. There is nothing happening. No copy, nothing happening. Yeah. Yeah, you get more plan types, you get more.
Do I need to sign the agreement first and pay, or do I just check it and then I get the bill?
Shankar, you want to address that? We want you to use. Later. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. There is nothing happening. So as I said, when you convert, there is a flag we get that okay, now you are EPBCS. So with that flag, we actually show this UI, and you have the option to choose whatever you want from this UI. So you get more plan types, all those things. Like once that flag is set, you get additional options in the product. We did not want to disturb suddenly, like you changed and oh my God, now I got so many forms, so many rules. What do I do with this? Right. Okay, so that's quickly on the configurations. So again, summarizing on the configurations before I jump into the additional, the complex configurations, the basic configurations. Start with small application, use these basic configurations to get started immediately, okay? And then look for more advanced as your users become more comfortable with this. The other thing which is we recently delivered, and the next few things which I'm going to talk about are the innovations we are doing on EPBCS. So this is not just what you had in PBCS, we are getting into EPBCS. We are actually spending lots of resources on ensuring that these features are made simple and easier for you to actually use. So rolling forecast is one such functionality where we recommend our customers now to do more rolling forecast because that is the best practice. That instead of creating your annual plans, you relook at your plans more frequently so that they stay more current. Rolling forecast, if PVCS implementation, it provides good functionality there, but then the configuration is a little challenging because you need to go to the form and set the rolling forecast range and all that thing, right? And the other challenge is that you can't set it by plan type. Like I may want to do rolling forecast at 13 weeks or 26, 52 weeks. Don't want to do rolling forecast in projects. Or I may want to do at more monthly rolling forecast there. So all those kind of capabilities we have actually added in rolling forecast functionality here. So let me show a quick demo again. And as I mentioned, these functionalities you can enable from the enable feature screen. So it is not like as soon as we release it, it is available to you. We deliver in the monthly patches. You can read in the document that, okay, now this new feature is available. I want this new feature. I can go to the enable feature screen, enable that feature, and then it is available to you. So going back to the configuration screen, enable features, you will see a new option. I think this is already available in 1706. We delivered this in 1705. It's available in 1706 also. So you can enable, you can see inline help right there, like what this feature will do. So we try to make it as simple as possible. We also have short videos for each of the new features that we are delivering. So it is easy for you to understand. And again, this you can configure from the plan forecast screen. So you will see various options here. Weekly, monthly or quarterly. So as you choose weeks, you can configure it for 13 weeks, 26 weeks or 52 weeks, whatever meets your requirement. It shows the rolling forecast range. You also can choose the number of actual periods you want to show in the forms as you do rolling forecast. It's highly configurable. Various options, additional options available for each configuration there, like monthly or quarterly, what you can do. And on the left, you see in this screen, you can actually, as an administrator, all you need to do is change the current month every time, and the right-hand side, the configurations automatically work. So it just rolls over. Behind the scene, what we are doing, I will show the forms, how they work. So when you enable this feature, the forms, the dashboards, the accounts for this will get seeded in the application automatically, right? So out-of-box functionality available to you, how rolling forecast can be leveraged, and then you can add more if you want to. So basically, when I'm doing my rolling forecast, right, do I just want to see my rolling forecast range, or I also want to see some actual periods? So I can choose, like I want to see 3 months of past data for doing 12 months of rolling forecast, right? Yeah.
Quick question. Can you have more than one rolling forecast scenario available? And does the rolling forecast scenario use the same business rules and concepts, or does it have its own set?
Good question. So can I have more rolling forecast scenarios? We are working on that. As of now, it is just a one scenario. But all the rules, the trend-based calculations, the driver-based calculations, everything gets regenerated once you have rolling forecast available. So they will continue to work in the rolling forecast. Okay? So I have enabled rolling forecast for financials, and I again go to the revenue planning card there, and I will see additional horizontal tabs showing rolling forecast functionality, right? So these are the out-of-box dashboards that we ship. You will see an additional horizontal tab called rolling forecast. Yeah.
That enable features and question about the number of actual periods.
Yeah.
So every time we do a reforecast, we would go in and perform another enable feature and increase the number.
No, you don't have to do anything. So if you are just, you are saying I want to do 12 months rolling forecast. Let's say you are saying 12 months rolling forecast, right? and you also want to see just 3 months of actuals, right? So you configured that once. Every time what you need to do is just change the current month, that's all. It will keep automatically updating your rolling forecast range. It will only show the past 3 months of data. All that is happening automatically. And this is leveraging big time the valid combinations features that we delivered in PPCS. So you can look at how valid combinations are being used with rolling forecast.
Actually, it's a current month for month.
Yeah. So let's say I'm in May and I want to do 12 months rolling, right? So it starts from June, goes till May of next year, right? And I want to see past 3 months of actuals. So it is March, April, May, 3 months of actuals, right? If I roll over to June, automatically that actuals will become May, June, July, and then the rolling forecast range will also change.
I always want to see current year's actual January through first month.
You want to see current year actuals from January to till whatever time always? Okay, so that's a good requirement. Actually, we just show the number of periods that you want to see actuals. Because when you're looking at rolling forecast, right, the concept of year is not there. You are always looking at 12 months ahead. You are always looking at that 18 months ahead. There's no concept of yearly plan. So that's the reason we always are showing you the number of actual periods, but we can add that. Any other questions on rolling forecast? Yeah.
So you can change the number of actual months every month, right?
You can always change that if you want to. You can do that, yeah. So that's a yeah. You can do that. So, and again, I want to say one thing here. Like when you are doing a change at one place, it applies to all the forms, all the dashboards, everything. So you don't have to go and change every single form based on this configuration that you have done. Behind the scenes, we are taking care of all that. We have added some new KPIs also with rolling forecast, the trailing 12 months and the projected 12 months. So that those are additional functionalities we have added. Yeah.
Are these settings configurable through the API?
Are these settings configurable through what REST APIs you're saying? Showing the forms quickly for rolling forecast here. This is the trend-based calculation form for financials. So I want to stay on this form for a few moments because what we provide in financials is out-of-box trend-based and driver-based calculations. So we have seen our customers from last so many years that they want to derive their future plans based on the past year trends or different methods, different trends, right? Use different trends to derive their future plans, right? So you can, and plus they also want to do driver-based planning. So we have combined those two things here in financials, where you can do trend-based and driver-based planning for your different revenue planning or expense planning, right? And if you look at this particular form now this is automatically configured for rolling forecast. So you are seeing 1 month actual here, and you are seeing all the rest of the 12 months of rolling period range. Because this is a trend-based form, that's why it is read-only, because I'm calculating these periods. If I go to a direct entry form here, you will see those periods writable. Any other questions on rolling forecast? The other functionality which we are adding very soon is weekly planning. And this has been a huge requirement coming from our already customers who have adopted EPBCS that they want weekly planning, and especially it is required for operational planning requirements, where the granularity of planning is more lower. Weekly planning, when we plan to do this feature, we wanted to make it very flexible. So some of the requirements which came from our product managers was that you should be able to configure it by different scenarios. So I can say that, okay, plan scenario I want to do weekly, while forecast scenario I don't want to do weekly, right? Also, you should make it configurable to map the weeks to months, how the weeks map to months, right? Because in different industries, like retail, for example, they have 53-week concept. Every 6th year you have a 53 weeks. Or in case of projects use case, you are going more by calendar weeks, where you have working days, you have the weekends, and you want your weeks to map to months accordingly, so that the hours on the projects get calculated accordingly. The holidays are accounted for. Everything is accounted for, right? So all those configurations we are providing. Not only that, the other capability which our product managers wanted and our customers wanted was that I should be able to plan some accounts weekly, and some other accounts I should be able to plan monthly. So for example, I may want to plan revenue weekly, expenses monthly. And I should be able to turn on and off this functionality for different entities. All these capabilities, okay? So let me quickly show a demo of this. Again, the landing page is enable feature screen. This can be enabled incrementally. So if you are an existing EPBCS customer, you want to leverage this feature, you can go to enable feature screen and just enable it from that UI. So you will see a new option in the enable features called weekly planning, and a different methodology for mapping. We added 3, we are adding 3 more very soon. So once you enable this, you will see additional configuration options in the UI. The weekly configuration. This is the advanced configuration. So here you can choose it starts showing up weekly planning now in your plan forecast screen. So you can actually say that, okay, which year you want to plan weekly. And you can also choose different scenarios, like plan scenario I want to enable weekly, and forecast scenario I don't want to, right? So I can do that. In the weekly configuration, you will see additional options that, okay, what is the start of the week? How many working days you have in the week? Which are the extra week that you have, where do you want to map that for the 53 weeks scenario, right? The detailed configuration allows you to turn on and off weekly planning for different entities. So it shows the entity structure completely. And you can actually, and there are lots of tools we are going to provide here to do mass enablement or mass disablement if you want to. You don't want to go each entity and do that kind of job. So you can do that. So in this case, I have enabled weekly planning for 2 entities, the sales US and manufacturing US. I go into details, I can enable weekly planning for only some accounts here. So for sales US, for example, I enabled weekly planning for revenue planning and monthly for expense. Okay, and for manufacturing US, I have enabled expense planning as weekly, right? So how does this impact forms? I'll quickly go into that. Yeah. You can configure weekly different, exactly. You can say that I don't want weekly for capital module because it doesn't make sense. I don't do weekly planning for my CapEx expenses. No need to enable that. And I will show some of the things which we have added in PBCS platform for supporting this feature. So if I go to forms now, and if I choose sales US entity, it will automatically show weeks in those same forms that I had earlier. So we are not adding any new forms, same forms. You will start seeing weekly periods instead of months. So here you can see weekly periods. And all the calculations that we have, the trend-based calculations, the driver-based calculations, will continue to work for weekly. So that is the advantage. Like that's why I was saying that okay, try to leverage out of box. We are adding so many things here. You will be able to leverage that once we add the feature. Again, different trends. We are going to add new trends for weekly planning because you may have more. And we are also providing ability soon to add more trends. So you can add new trends if you want to, if our trends don't suit your requirement. So the calculations work here. I can show the expense planning form now because for Celsius, I had chosen expense to be monthly, right? So if I go to this direct entry form here where I can enter the expenses directly here, it's all monthly, right? If I switch the entity now from Celsius to manufacturing US, in the same form you start seeing weekly. This is heavily using valid combinations features. For those of you who are familiar with planning and with PBCS, this is heavily using the valid combinations features behind the scene. So when you actually go to the plan forecast UI and when you actually configured different entities behind the scenes, we updated the valid combinations to make it work automatically with this. Okay. The behind the scenes thing I also want to show like what really happens when you enable weekly. In the period dimension, a new hierarchy gets added. Weeks will get added in the period dimension. Now period is a dense dimension for those of you who you know, right? Period is a dense dimension and you don't want those 52 members to be affecting all different business processes if they are not going to use weekly, right? So we added a new feature in PBCS and in EPBCS where you can enable period by plan type, the period members by plan type. So these weekly members, yeah. Yeah, we're adding that 53 weeks, we are also adding 13 periods. We got requirement from retail customers that they want 13 periods in a year. So we're adding. Okay, so if you see here the period dimension, the period members, it is only enabled for financials queue. So this ensures that your performance is not getting affected in other queues as you have enabled weekly here. And as we added this new feature, we are also testing our application to ensure that it is not affecting the performance of any of your forms, rules, and other things that you have in the application. The other thing which we are also shipping, the critical thing in weekly planning is that you need to be able to still translate the data from weeks to months, right? If you are doing this mixed approach, like some of the accounts you are doing weekly, some of the accounts you are doing monthly, some of the entities are doing weekly planning, while some other entities are doing monthly planning, how does that all consolidate? It's going to be very difficult for you to actually look at a top level entity or top level account and make any sense out of it, right? So we are shipping lot out of box rules for converting weeks to months or months to weeks. So you can actually do both ways and look at the top level members, look at the aggregated values at the top level members. These are Groovy rules. So we are again leveraging the whatever innovations we are doing on Groovy, we are leveraging that in our EPBCS models. The reason for using Groovy in this case is especially the number of configurations that we are providing for weeks to months mapping, where you are saying that, okay, I want to map my weeks to months based on the calendar, then we need to be able to access the calendar while converting weeks to months, right? You cannot do that in CAS scripts. And these rules are generated automatically based on your configuration. So going to the rules section, you can see these 4 rules. Another thing which Prasad mentioned yesterday, for those of you who attended this Groovy demo, this helps, I mean the Groovy also helps you scope the calculation to whatever you really want, right? So in this case, when we are seeding these 4 rules for weeks to months and months to weeks conversion, you can see the variations of these rules. There is a batch calculation where you can translate everything from weeks to months. There is a form-based calculation also. The form-based calculation gets generated based on the form that you have. So it will only calculate what you have in the form. It will not calculate unnecessary accounts and unnecessary years and periods. This is all happening dynamically for you. Okay? Any questions on this? Other functionality which we are enhancing for EPBCS is sandboxing actually. Sandboxing is available, has been available for PBCS for quite some time. We have added this functionality, or we started supporting this functionality for EPBCS also recently, where we said you can enable sandboxing by plant type. But we really did not support this for the out-of-box business processes, right? So what is Sandbox really for? How many of you have actually played with this functionality or know this functionality? Okay, cool. So you also know the challenges what we have in the current sandboxing functionality, but also the benefits. So Sandbox is actually a private area for creating your alternate plans, right? The traditional way people have been doing that is by creating members in the version dimension, copying data from your one version to another version, and then doing sandboxing there, which it makes it unmanageable after some time, because you don't have capability for the end users to do that, right? It is more the admin getting involved, creating different versions. Now you can say that, okay, pick this version and then do your sandboxing here, right? With this feature, we actually added capability for the end users to create that sandboxes. And we added member on the fly functionality for this, so you can add a member on the fly. That member is available only to the user who created the sandbox. So it's a private version. No one can see my plans till I publish the plans, right? It's a huge capability, especially very suitable for operational planning requirements, because you don't want even your managers to see your plan till you are done, right? So that is the capability which we have in sandboxing. Only when the sandbox is published, it is made available to everyone. And the other advantage is it doesn't create copy of your data. Only the modified data is stored in the sandbox. All the unmodified data still comes from the base version. So it's like a one-way mirror. You can see whatever is there in the base version and whatever I have modified in the sandbox. Okay, I'll show a quick demo of this, how we have enhanced this for EPBCS. Now, we want to add lots of collaboration capabilities. Shankar has been after me, but I wanted to make it work immediately for EPBCS before we add collaboration capabilities. So this is a projects use case where I have a list of projects. Now I can add my projects in Sandbox, and I can actually make it available only when I have done. Or I already have my projects in my base version. I want to change the dates of my projects. So as a user, I can create a Sandbox, and I can change the start date, end date of my projects if I want to. Right? So it has not created any copy of the data. Same data is visible to me in the sandbox. I can just change the end date here. If you see what is stored in the sandbox is shown in different colors. So only that particular cell is stored in the sandbox at this point. Okay? And if I go into the base version, I will not see this modified date, what I have in the sandbox, right? Now, once I have modified the end date for this project, I may want to change the resource plan for the project. I may want to change the end date for the resources. I may want to add more resources, reduce the resources. Whatever what-ifing capability you want to do, you can do that. So I go to the expense plan, resource plan. I can, now this particular functionality, for those of you who have used on-prem projects, we have enhanced this big time, the resource planning form, right? So I added a new row here quickly, and I am saving that change in the sandbox. The cool capability that we have provided now is running the rule in the sandbox. So you can run this calculation and it will show the modified data in the sandbox. The base version will still have the old data. Once I am satisfied with this what if analysis, I can publish that to the base version and it will be available to everyone. Any questions on this? You want to roll back the changes that you did?
Because I think what will happen is this is a fantastic feature, right? But it makes a huge assumption here. It makes an assumption that I live in the vacuum.
collaboration. Yeah, we're looking at collaboration. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we are looking at that collaboration capability. You can work with your colleagues, you can work with your manager, work in that sandbox mode. Everyone is happy when you say that now I publish. That is the enhancement we are going to do next. This uses two technologies actually. Prasad talked about hybrid yesterday. So as you might not have noticed this, the line items here is a project element dimension. It's all dynamic. So it is getting dynamically aggregated. You don't have to do the runner roll-up rule. So the number of calculations itself will get reduced and you can publish them. Changes. Any question? This is already available in PBCS. This is also available in EPBCS. The thing which was not available in EPBCS was running these rules in sandbox mode. Support for business rules in sandbox. So I just demonstrated that calculate expense rule, running the calculate expense rule in sandbox, right? So we did not support running business rules in sandbox. Now we are making it available. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Doing on time. Okay. I think I am over time. Any questions for me? Actually, there is no order required. It only depends on, like, let's say you want to do projects in future, right? So you may want to have project dimension in workforce because you may want to then later track your workforce resources by projects, the utilization of workforce resources by projects. But there is no order, like, there's no.
Our recommendation is that you follow the similar logic we follow in our development methodology. The way we follow our development methodology, you can see that it's not impacted. So we are very that. And the reason why we do it because then you can see the business right away. So rather than do a year, roll out the feature, we roll out every month. And a lot of our customers actually like that kind of style of development also. Rather than having a time for the project, they like to get something roll out in 2 months, get the benefits, and then end it on the future. With that in mind, we actually a lot of customers go with finding the smart because that's required by everybody. And they like to see it enabled right away, start giving the benefit, and then after that, it's just up to your part. So you want to go with project, or you want to go with workforce, you want to do that. So, but we have seen 90% of that people enable finance.
Any other questions for me? Okay, thanks a lot.